Everyone in the Romano mansion knew one rule: stay away from Diesel. The Mafia boss's 120-pound bulldog had bitten trainers, shredded leashes, and snapped steel bowls like toys. No one could get near him without risking a hospital trip, not even the boss himself. So when the door creaked open one afternoon and a tiny 7-year-old girl wandered into the courtyard, everybody froze. Diesel lifted his head. His growl rumbled through the floorboards. The guards reached for their guns. The maids screamed for her to move, but the little girl didn't run. She didn't flinch. She just tilted her head and whispered something no one could hear. Diesel stopped growling, his ears twitched, and then, in a moment that made every hardened gangster step back, the beast everyone feared slowly crawled toward her and placed his massive head gently in her lap. The Mafia boss watched from the balcony, stunned. He'd seen men beg for mercy, empires crumble, enemies fall, but he had never seen his dog obey anyone, especially not a child. What she did next shocked the entire mansion and revealed a secret about Diesel no one, not even the Mafia boss, ever knew. Stay with me until the end, because what this little girl reveals about the bulldog will change everything you think you know about loyalty. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Now let's get started. The Romano estate stretched across 15 acres of perfectly manicured grounds, hidden behind towering iron gates and surveillance cameras that tracked every movement. Inside the fortress-like compound, marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers, and paintings worth millions adorned walls that had witnessed more secrets than most people could imagine in a lifetime. But none of those secrets were as dangerous as the one that lived in the East Wing courtyard. Vincent Romano had built his empire on fear, respect, and an iron fist business to discuss, and the mansion wasn't exactly child-proofed. But Antonio was too valuable an ally to offend over such a small matter. "Of course," Vincent replied. "Maria will look after her while we talk." The head housekeeper appeared as if summoned, her face lighting up at the sight of Sophia. Maria had raised 4 children of her own and possessed that maternal instinct that drew youngsters like magnets. She extended her hand to Sophia, who took it without hesitation. "Come, little one," Maria said gently. "I have cookies in the kitchen." But as they walked through the mansion's grand foyer, Sophia's attention was captured by something else entirely. Through the tall windows that faced the east wing, she could see into a courtyard where a massive dog lay sprawled in a patch of sunlight. Sophia stopped walking. "What kind of dog is that?" she asked, her voice filled with genuine curiosity rather than fear. Maria's expression immediately darkened. She glanced nervously toward the east wing, then back at Sophia. "That's Diesel," she whispered. "But we don't go near him, Bambina. He's very dangerous." Sophia tilted her head, studying the bulldog through the glass. From her perspective, Diesel didn't look dangerous. He looked sad. His massive frame was perfectly still, but something in his posture reminded her of the stray dogs she'd seen wandering the streets near her grandfather's house in Sicily. Dogs who had forgotten what it felt like to trust. "He looks lonely," Sophia observed. Maria's eyes widened in alarm. No, cara mia. He is not lonely. He is mean. Very, very mean. Come, let's go to the kitchen." But Sophia's attention remained fixed on the courtyard. As if sensing her gaze, Diesel's head lifted. Their eyes met through the window, and something passed between them. A recognition that neither fully understood, but both felt in their bones. The little girl smiled and waved. Diesel's ears twitched forward. Maria noticed the exchange and quickly steered Sophia away from the window. "Come now," she insisted, her voice carrying a note of panic. "Mr. Romano would be very angry if something happened to you." They spent the next hour in the kitchen, where Maria plied Sophia with homemade biscotti and fresh milk, while keeping up a steady stream of chatter designed to distract the child from thoughts of the courtyard. Sophia was polite and appreciative, but her mind kept wandering back to the sad-eyed dog she'd glimpsed through the window. Meanwhile, in Vincent's study, business proceeded smoothly. Antonio and Vincent discussed shipping routes, payment schedules, and the intricate logistics of moving certain goods through certain ports without attracting unwanted attention. Both men were pleased with the arrangements they were negotiating. It was during a brief pause in their conversation, as Vincent stepped onto his balcony to take a phone call, that disaster struck. Sophia had excused herself to use the bathroom. Maria, trusting the child's polite demeanor, had pointed her toward the guest facilities near the main foyer. But instead of following the hallway to the bathroom, Sophia had taken a different path entirely. She remembered seeing a door near the windows that overlooked the courtyard. Her 7-year-old logic told her that if there was a door, it must lead somewhere, and if it led to the courtyard, maybe she could get a closer look at the lonely dog. The heavy wooden door was unlocked. Sophia pushed it open with both hands, surprised by its weight, and stepped into the east wing courtyard. The afternoon sun felt warm on her face. The courtyard was larger than she'd expected, with stone pathways winding between planters filled with flowering shrubs. It would have been beautiful if not for the absolute silence that seemed to press down from all sides. Diesel lay exactly where she'd seen him through the window, but now Sophia could appreciate his true size. The bulldog was enormous, his broad chest rising and falling with each breath, his powerful frame radiating barely contained energy even in rest. As Sophia's foot touched the stone pathway, Diesel's eyes snapped open. The change in him was immediate and terrifying. His massive frame tensed, his lips pulled back to reveal teeth that looked capable of crushing bone. A growl rumbled from deep in his chest, so low and menacing that it seemed to vibrate through the courtyard stones. Sophia froze, not from fear, but from recognition. She had heard that sound before, during the long nights when her Nonna was dying. The old woman had made similar sounds when pain gripped her so tightly that words couldn't escape. It wasn't anger in Diesel's growl, it was anguish. "You're hurting," Sophia whispered. Her voice carried across the courtyard with startling clarity. Diesel's growl faltered. His ears, which had been flattened against his skull in aggressive warning, began to lift. Sophia took a small step forward, still clutching her teddy bear. "My Nonna hurt too," she continued, her voice gentle and unafraid. She made sounds like that when the sickness was really bad, but she felt better when someone sat with her. Diesel's massive head tilted slightly, as if trying to understand this small human who showed no fear of his size or his reputation. Sophia took another step, then another, moving slowly but with purpose. "I used to read to her," she explained conversationally, "stories about brave knights and magical kingdoms. She said the stories helped her remember good things instead of just the hurting." By now, several staff members had discovered Sophia's absence from the kitchen. Maria's panicked shouts echoed through the Giaccio mansion halls. Giuseppe's heavy footsteps pounded across marble floors as he raced toward the east wing. From his study, Vincent could hear the commotion and was already moving toward his balcony to investigate, but Sophia heard none of it. Her entire attention was focused on the massive dog who watched her approach with an expression that was gradually shifting from hostility to something resembling curiosity. "You don't have to be afraid," Sophia said, now close enough to see the scars that crisscrossed Diesel's face and neck. "I won't hurt you." She sat down on the stone pathway, just out of reach of Diesel's powerful jaws, and arranged her white dress carefully around her legs. Then she looked up at him with eyes that held no judgment, no fear, and no expectation beyond simple companionship. "Would you like to hear a story?" she asked. For a moment that stretched like eternity, the courtyard held its breath. Diesel stared at the small girl who sat fearlessly before him, her teddy bear clutched in one arm, her other hand extended palm up in a gesture of pure trust. The massive bulldog's scarred face carried an expression no one in the Romano mansion had ever witnessed before. Confusion mixed with something deeper, something that looked almost like recognition. Then Diesel did something that defied every instinct the hardened criminals upstairs believed they understood about power and dominance. He lowered his enormous head, and took a single, careful step forward. Maria's screams from inside the mansion grew more frantic. Giuseppe's boots thundered down the marble staircase as he raced toward the courtyard. Vincent Romano himself appeared on his balcony, his face pale with disbelief as he watched his untamable beast approach the child with movements so gentle they seemed to belong to an entirely different animal. But Sophia remained perfectly still, her dark eyes locked on Diesel's amber ones, her voice continuing in that same soft, storytelling cadence that seemed to cast a spell over the entire estate. "Once upon a time," she began, "there was a brave dog who lived in a beautiful castle. But the dog was very sad because everyone was afraid of him. They didn't know that deep inside. He just wanted someone to understand that he wasn't really scary at all." Diesel's massive frame trembled slightly. His breathing, which had been sharp and aggressive moments before, began to slow and deepen. The rigid tension in his shoulders started to ease as Sophia's words washed over him like a gentle tide. The dog had forgotten what it felt like to be loved. Sophia continued, her voice carrying across the courtyard with remarkable clarity. He had been hurt so many times that he forgot how to trust. So he growled and snapped to keep everyone away, because being alone felt safer than risking more pain. From the balcony above, Vincent gripped the iron railing so tightly his knuckles turned white. In 30 years of controlling men through fear and intimidation, he had never witnessed anything like this. His most dangerous possession, the creature that had terrorized trainers and staff alike, was being transformed before his eyes by nothing more than a child's gentle words. Diesel took another step forward, then another, until he was close enough that Sophia could see the network of old scars that marked his face and neck. Some looked like bite marks from other dogs. Others appeared to be from chains or restraints pulled too tight. His left ear bore the telltale notch of a fighting ring, and his muzzle carried the faded marks of a cage worn too long. Sophia's expression didn't change as she took in these signs of Diesel's brutal past. If anything, her eyes grew softer with understanding. "You were hurt before you came here," she whispered, and it wasn't a question. "Someone was very mean to you, weren't they?" Diesel's ears flattened, but not in aggression this time, in shame. His massive head drooped as if the weight of his memories had become too heavy to bear. "But that wasn't your fault," Sophia said firmly, her 7-year-old voice carrying an authority that would have impressed judges and senators. "Being hurt doesn't make you bad. It just makes you scared." The little girl slowly extended her hand, palm still up, fingers relaxed and unthreatening. "My nonna told me that scared animals need extra patience. She said you have to show them it's safe to trust again, one little bit at a time." Diesel stared at her outstretched hand for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. His nostrils flared as he caught her scent, sweet and clean and completely free of the fear sweat that had marked every other human who had entered his domain. Then, moving with a delicacy that seemed impossible for such a massive creature, Diesel stretched his neck forward and gently pressed his nose against Sophia's palm. The touch lasted only a moment, but its impact rippled through the mansion like an earthquake. From the kitchen, Maria's sobbing prayers grew louder. Giuseppe, who had finally reached the courtyard door, froze with his hand on the handle, afraid that any sudden movement might shatter whatever magic was unfolding before his eyes. Vincent Romano, a man who had built an empire on his ability to read and control situations, found himself completely powerless to understand what he was witnessing. His daughter had been roughly Sophia's age when she died in the car accident that had hardened his heart forever. Watching this fearless child work miracles with his untouchable dog awakened emotions Vincent had spent years burying beneath layers of calculated cruelty. Sophia smiled as Diesel's warm breath tickled her palm. "See? You're not scary at all. You're just lonely." She began to tell another story, this one about a princess who befriended a dragon that everyone else feared. As her voice wove through the afternoon air, Diesel gradually relaxed further, his massive frame settling onto the stone pathway beside her. His breathing deepened into something approaching peace. But Sophia's stories carried more than just comfort. With each gentle word, she was unlocking memories that Diesel had buried so deep he had almost forgotten they existed. Images of a time before the fighting rings, before the chains and cages, before the systematic brutalization that had turned a loving puppy into a weapon of pure aggression. There had been another little girl once, long ago, a child with gentle hands who had smuggled him treats and whispered secrets in his ear. She had been torn away from him when the fighting ring owners decided he was ready for more serious training. He had never seen her again, but her memory had lived in the deepest part of his heart, buried beneath years of pain and rage. Sophia's voice was different from that long-lost child's, but her fearlessness was the same. Her kindness was the same. And for the first time in years, Diesel remembered what it felt like to be more than just a monster. As the afternoon shadows grew longer, Sophia continued her stories. She told Diesel about brave knights who protected the innocent, about magical kingdoms where every creature was valued, about friendships that could overcome any obstacle. With each tale, the invisible walls around Diesel's heart cracked a little further. The staff members who had gathered to witness this impossible scene began to whisper among themselves. How could a child, who had never seen the dog before, understand exactly what he needed to hear? How could her presence alone transform the mansion's most feared resident into something approaching gentleness? Even Antonio Castellano had emerged from Vincent's study, drawn by the commotion, and now stood beside his host on the balcony. The old man's weathered face carried a knowing expression that suggested this wasn't the first time he had witnessed his granddaughter's unusual gift with troubled souls. She has always been this way, Antonio murmured to Vincent. Animals, they sense something in her, something pure that the rest of us have lost. Vincent nodded slowly, unable to take his eyes off the scene below. What happened to her parents? He asked quietly. Antonio's expression darkened. Killed by rival family 3 months ago. Sophia? She was in the car but survived? The doctors? They said it was miracle she wasn't hurt worse. But I think maybe she was hurt in ways that don't show on the outside. The revelation hit Vincent like a physical blow. This fearless child had suffered losses that would have broken grown men. Yet here she sat, offering comfort to his untamable beast with a generosity of spirit that shamed every hardened criminal in the mansion. As if sensing the weight of the adult conversation above, Sophia looked up toward the balcony. Her dark eyes met Vincent's across the distance, and she offered him the same gentle smile she had given Diesel. Your dog is very brave, she called up to him. He just needed someone to remind him. Vincent found himself nodding, though he wasn't entirely sure what he was agreeing with. Nothing about this afternoon made sense according to the rules that had governed his life for decades. Power came from strength and fear, not from gentle words and patient kindness. Control was maintained through dominance, not through understanding. Yet here was proof that his fundamental assumptions about the nature of strength might be completely wrong. Sophia had accomplished in 20 minutes what teams of professional trainers had failed to achieve in 3 years. She had reached past Diesel's aggression to touch something deeper, something that no amount of force or intimidation could access. As the sun began to set over the Romano estate, casting golden light across the courtyard, Sophia finally stood up and brushed the dust from her white dress. Diesel immediately rose as well, his massive frame positioning itself protectively beside her much smaller one. I should probably go back to my grandfather now, Sophia said, speaking to Diesel as if he could understand every word. But maybe I can visit you again tomorrow. Diesel's tail, which hadn't wagged in anyone's memory, gave a small, tentative wag. The sight of that simple gesture broke something loose in Vincent Romano's chest. He gripped the balcony railing tighter, fighting back emotions he had thought were dead and buried with his own daughter. Below in the courtyard, Sophia reached up and gently stroked Diesel's scarred cheek. Remember what I told you about being brave? She whispered. You don't have to be afraid anymore. You have friends now." As she walked toward the courtyard door, Diesel followed a few steps before stopping, as if some invisible leash held him back. But his eyes remained fixed on Sophia until she disappeared through the doorway, and even then he continued staring at the spot where she had been. The mansion erupted in whispered conversations and nervous laughter as the staff tried to process what they had witnessed. But Vincent remained on his balcony, watching his transformed dog settle back onto the stone pathway with an expression of patient waiting. For the first time in 3 years, Diesel wasn't pacing his domain like a caged predator. He was simply lying still, his amber eyes focused on the door through which Sophia had vanished, his entire being radiating a calm contentment that seemed to spread through the very air around him. That evening, after Sophia had been reunited with her grandfather and the mansion had settled into an uneasy quiet, Vincent found himself standing alone in the courtyard. The stone pathways gleamed silver under the moonlight, and the air carried the faint scent of jasmine from the garden beyond. But his attention was fixed entirely on Diesel, who lay in the exact spot where Sophia had left him hours earlier. The massive bulldog hadn't moved. He remained curled on the stones, his amber eyes reflecting the pale light as they stayed locked on the door through which the little girl had disappeared. Every few minutes, his ears would perk up at distant sounds from within the mansion, hope flickering across his scarred features before fading back into patient waiting. Vincent had never seen anything like it. For 3 years, Diesel had been a force of pure destruction, a living weapon that even Vincent couldn't control. Yet one afternoon, with a 7-year-old girl, had transformed him into something Vincent barely recognized. The change wasn't temporary either. Hours had passed, and Diesel showed no signs of returning to his old aggressive patterns. Giuseppe appeared at Vincent's shoulder, his weathered face creased with confusion. "Boss," he said quietly, "what do we do about this? The men are asking questions." Vincent understood the concern. His reputation was built on absolute control, on the ability to dominate any situation through superior force and cunning. Having his most dangerous possession tamed by a child raised uncomfortable questions about his authority. Word would spread beyond the mansion walls. Rival families would hear whispers about Vincent Romano's softening, about weakness creeping into his empire. But as Vincent watched Diesel's vigil, he found himself caring less about those implications than he would have expected. "Tell the men to keep their mouths shut," he said finally. "What happened here today stays here." Giuseppe nodded and melted back into the shadows, but Vincent remained in the courtyard. Something about Diesel's transformation nagged at him, demanding deeper examination. The dog's change had been too complete, too immediate to be explained by simple training or even exceptional kindness. Vincent had witnessed Sophia's gentleness, heard her soothing words, seen her fearless approach, but there had been something else in the interaction, something that transcended normal human-animal bonding. The way Diesel had responded to her presence suggested recognition rather than mere acceptance. A memory stirred in Vincent's mind. 3 years ago, when Diesel had first arrived at the mansion, the business associate who delivered him had mentioned the dog's background, something about fighting rings and previous owners. Vincent hadn't paid much attention to the details then, focused as he was on acquiring what he believed would be the perfect guard dog. Now those forgotten details seemed crucial. Vincent pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found the number he needed. Marco Torino answered on the second ring, his gravelly voice carrying the weariness of a man who conducted most of his business after midnight. "Vincent, what can I do for you at this ungodly hour?" "The dog you brought me 3 years ago," Vincent said without preamble. "Diesel, I need to know everything about where he came from." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "That's ancient history, Vincent. Why the sudden interest?" "Just tell me." Marco sighed, the sound crackling through the phone's speaker. "I got him from a fighting operation that got shut down by the authorities. Brutal place, from what I heard. The dog was one of their top fighters, undefeated in the ring. But he had behavioral issues that made him difficult to handle even for those animals. Vincent's grip tightened on his phone. What kind of behavioral issues? Unpredictable aggression, mostly. But here's the strange part. The handlers said he was completely different around children. Docile, almost protective. They used to use a little girl to calm him down between fights. Some street kid they'd picked up. Apparently, she was the only one who could get near him when he was worked up. Vincent's blood ran cold as Marco's words sank in. The little girl from the fighting ring. Sophia's instant connection with Diesel. The way the massive bulldog had responded to her voice, her touch, her presence. It all made horrifying sense. "Marco," Vincent's voice was barely a whisper. "What happened to that girl?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Word was she got adopted by some family. Nice people, I heard. Got her out of that hellhole before it was too late." Vincent's mind raced. Sophia's parents, killed 3 months ago. Her survival against impossible odds. The way she seemed to understand Diesel's pain without explanation. The recognition in both their eyes when they first saw each other through the mansion window. "The family that adopted her," Vincent pressed. "You wouldn't happen to know their name?" "Castellano," Marco replied. "Why all the questions, Vincent? This is ancient history." Vincent ended the call without another word. His hands trembled as he stared down at Diesel, who remained motionless in his vigil. The dog wasn't waiting for just any little girl to return. He was waiting for the one person who had shown him kindness in the darkest chapter of his life. The child who had been ripped away from him when the fighting ring decided he was ready for more brutal training. Sophia hadn't just calmed a dangerous animal that afternoon. She had reunited with her oldest friend. A friend who had never forgotten her gentle hands, her soothing voice, her fearless heart. Diesel's transformation wasn't magic or miracle. It was recognition. It was love. It was the unbreakable bond between two souls who had survived hell together and found each other again against impossible odds. Vincent Romano had built an empire on the belief that loyalty could be bought, and fear could control anything. But watching Diesel's unwavering devotion to a little girl who had saved his spirit years ago, the crime boss finally understood the difference between obedience and true loyalty. One was a transaction. The other was a choice that transcended everything else. Sometimes the most powerful connections aren't forged through strength or intimidation. Sometimes they're built through simple kindness offered to someone who needed it most. And sometimes those connections can survive anything the world throws at them, waiting patiently for the moment when two broken souls can heal each other once again.